Welcome, everybody. This is Hugh Massie, the chairman and founder of DNA Behavior International. And today I'm delighted to be hosting another one of our identity conversations. And I've got the good fortune to have with me Jason Wright, who is a highly energetic entrepreneur who's been into multiple businesses, exited successfully, lifelong learner, like me, an avid book reader. We're looking at his library right now. Great thought leader. So, Jason, welcome.
Thanks, Hugh. I'm so glad to be here. I appreciate you making this time for me.
So, Jason, why don't you just tell us a little bit about your life and career background? Go back as early as you want, that to perhaps a shaping moment, and just go from there, and we'll unpack your identity from that.
Sure thing. And what I'm going to do with that, Hugh, also, I think you'll get a good understanding of my identity as it relates to a fixed versus a growth mindset, which I know that you're very, very well aware of. And this will make sense. So, grew up in a very small town in East Texas. My father was self-employed my whole life. My grandfather, we were an old family in the small town that I grew up in, was the first member of my family to ever attend and then later graduate from college, then went on and got an MBA for reasons I'll touch on here in just a second. After I graduated from Stephen F. Austin State University, a small regional state university in East Texas, I had no clue what I was going to do. I was very successful in undergrad in that I've always had just natural abilities to lead and be likable and that sort of thing. I think a lot of that comes from my relationship with my father, always trying to gain his acceptance. That led me to always try to get the acceptance of everyone around me. And I was able to win friends and influence people. And I took a job with Computer Sciences Corporation. And here's where the fixed versus growth mindset starts to appear as I look back on the artifacts of my life. I took the job with Computer Sciences Corporation simply because it said computer science is in the name of the business. It made me look smart, made me feel smart, turned down other jobs with like Hormel Foods, Sealy Mattress that would have been a lot more fun. I knew they were more fun. They were more suited to my personality, which I was made for sales, Hugh, but I didn't want to
Yeah.
do sales because sales was not intellectual. Sales was not something that people bragged about. The first thing I did when I started working for CSC is start thinking about when I'm going to get my MBA so that I can then go to a big name university and get that credential so people will take me seriously and I'll be important. I bopped along through the late 90s, early 2000s in corporate America. My last job was with the Home Depot, working for Bob Nardelli, the first outside CEO that ever worked at Home Depot, basically as like an internal management consultant, and got tired of being on the road all the time. Wanted two things. I wanted to run my own business, be an entrepreneur, and I wanted to move back to East Texas to raise my two daughters, who were 2 and 3 at the time. Moved to Tyler, Texas, bought a real estate business. It was a tired, dead, old Century 21 franchise. I had never sold a house in my life. I had no family or friends in Tyler, Texas. It was just about an hour. It was the biggest town, mid-sized city, close to where I grew up and pretty close to where I went to college. I loved it and just handpicked it and bought the business, got my real estate license. Gosh, probably within a week or two of closing the deal to buy the business, had to own it for 2 years before I could even sit for my broker's license. So I did that, and it was a really incredible story of how I acquired that business, Hugh, but it came easy to me. So that's another thing with me. Things like that, if I can get the vision, then
Yeah.
I can usually execute pretty quickly. So I did that, bought some more companies, sold those, went and got my MBA at SMU, did some acquisitions with some friends, did some exits, and then was a city councilman, and basically have been just a small time, I would say. I thought I was going to go to SMU to be like some big, powerful private equity guy, make gazillions of dollars doing big deals. Never happened. Didn't want to do that. Didn't want to move to Dallas. And so basically have been here in East Texas, avoiding a real job ever since. And that brings me to today. Started my podcast, which is how you and I met about
Yeah.
7 years ago this month, which started as the Texas Titans podcast. As you mentioned, before we got on, my media company is Texas Titan Media. I did that as a way to build an audience for a book that I was re-releasing, Push Play, Taking Your Life Off Pause, which basically described this entire story in detail of how I escaped from corporate America, and started to blueprint my life to become an entrepreneur, focus on the things that really meant something to me. And then that just became the Jason Wright Show as I broadened the reach across the country and globe for that matter with different topics that weren't just related to Texas leaders and accomplished people. And here I am.
Yeah, so it's quite a quite a story and a journey, and in a way, it's similar to mine, I think, Jason. And you started in corporate life, and then you didn't want to have a job anymore, and went to the entrepreneurial life. And I think it seems like you've done a lot of things there, or made a lot of decisions to ensure that you could bring up your family in an environment that you wanted to bring them up in, and also be present. Because
Most
it's
definitely.
easy to get lost in corporate life, I think, and miss your family, even though you've got a secure paycheck. But when you were in CSC, what do you think was your real gift there for succeeding? And then, I'm probably going to ask the same question when you were in Home Depot. What do you think was the secret sauce for you in terms of your success?
Making people like me.
Right.
I've always been able to, and it's not with nefarious intent, not by being disingenuous. I'm more relational than transactional, which is interesting
Yeah.
because I don't have a lot of close friends. I don't hang out with anybody. I hang out with my wife, and that's it. I don't hang out with friends. But I think that's definitely my superpower is to make people feel special, to find and always put other people before me. I'm not interested in you and I sitting down. And in fact, I get really turned off at a lot of conversations that happen in business where essentially it's two guys talking. And really, if we have bubbles over our heads, it would say, does this guy make more money than me? Is this guy really important? And I can't stand that crap. So, what I've always been able to do is make people feel very comfortable around me. And therefore, because I was in a rotational program at CSC, which meant that my office was literally in the executive um, offices, which was closed. It was very old school. It was closed off. You had to go through security just to get into where my office was. But I did rotations through sales, through an inside sales department, customer service, accounting, human resources.
Yeah.
And I was constantly dealing with and it didn't matter. And I give my dad credit for that in the way I was raised. I have always been able to, I don't care if you're the person that cleans the toilets at night or you're the CEO, we're going to find common ground and I'm going to get along with you. And a lot of that has to do with other elements of my background too, as well, I think. But that's a long way of kind of describing, I think, my superpower. It was, and I had to use that real quick, Hugh. I had to use that ability to be likable to overcome the fact that I am not naturally gifted in a lot of the things that business requires. I'm not a good quantitative person. I'm never going to whip a spreadsheet. I can tell you what the weighted average cost of capital is, but I'm going to have to go find someone else to put all the pieces together, the hurdle rates and all that, to determine then, how to value a business, for example. So I leveraged my likability as a way to make up for what I lacked in that kind of natural intellectual bandwidth.
But I think one of the things I'm picking up from what you just said is that your likability factor is across a lot of people. In other words, you've got the capability to make a lot of people like you very quickly, as opposed to some other people can make just a few people like them, and they work on, very much a depth of relationship, but they don't spread themselves out. Whereas you're able to connect with a lot of people and motivate them very quickly.
For sure. I think
And there's
it's
a difference, I think, between those two. It's not saying one's better than the other,
right.
but in terms of that gift, being able to go around all of the departments, there being lots of people around to be able to do that. So yeah. So what
Well,
about in Home Depot?
so Home Depot was just kind of it was weird how I got there. My first real entrepreneurial venture was with two guys that were working for Arthur Anderson at the time. Um, and they started a company that was basically a project management company, one client, and it was Enron. And they brought me on as the operations manager. So it was basically the three of us that were principals. We had some other contract employees. And when Enron went bust, we obviously lost our contract. I had some money saved, so it didn't hurt me financially. thank God. But I just started looking for a big corporate household name. And Nardelli had, when he didn't get Jack Welch's job at GE, I didn't find this out until I had read Jack Welch's first book he wrote right about the time he retired. I learned who Nardelli was, learned he was at Home Depot, and thought, I'm going to go check out what's going on at Home Depot. Everybody knows how they make money. Very crystal clear balance sheet. I'm going to go do something like that. No more services, no more, consulting. I'm going to go to an old line household name. And I got that job, and it was kind of a rotational program as well. We were actually in the stores working with store managers. Now, by the way, it was kind of funny because I didn't have my MBA at the time, but I was but most everyone else in the group I was in, they all had like Ivy League MBAs, or they were junior military officers that had gone on to graduate school. And we would show up as these kind of young eggheads that, thought we were really smart. And this is a store manager that probably started pushing carts in the parking lot when he or she was 17. It was now a multi-millionaire running a
Yeah.
$55 million a year business as a store manager. And we're going to come in on behalf of Bob Nardelli and tell them how to help their business grow and shape up and put in things like Six Sigma and all this. But going back to that CSC talent, I think that was my strength in that program. I was able to overcome a lot of that natural tendency. Imagine the movie Office Space. The consultants come in to do the layoffs. Well, I was kind of like one of the guys coming in they just didn't want to see coming, because like, what do you know about my business? You've never worked in retail in your life. But I was able to gain their trust and then understand the business. And it just became, that was my gift in that. And also being the leader, we were kind of in a cohort, and I was one of the leaders for sure of that cohort, of just kind of be able to, I learned this at that time and I wasn't mature enough really to understand the power of this gift, Hugh, at all. And I misused it. I will absolutely say this. I had the power to determine whether the 25 or so people that were in my cohort were positive about what we were doing or negative.
Yeah.
And probably more times than not, because a lot of what we did was silly and typical corporate waste. And I would voice my opinion on that. I would not suffer fools that were in the cohort that I thought were that shouldn't be there. And was probably one of them pulled me aside and said, and this was one of the biggest lessons I ever learned professionally while at Home Depot. This poor guy pulled me aside after I had been pretty snippy with him in this project we were working on. And he said, Jason, he said, you really just, you disappointed me with the way you addressed me in front of everybody. He said, I actually think you're probably going to be the CEO of Home Depot one day. I look up to you. And I can't believe you just treated me that way. And dude, it was like, it crushed me.
Wow. Yeah.
It crushed me, Hugh. It really did. And there was no coming back from it. I tried my best to correct course with him personally, but the damage had been done. But I tell you this, I took it with me for the rest of my career, especially as an entrepreneur, although there were times that I failed miserably as a young entrepreneur as well, for the same reasons of not really being aware of how a leader can control the temperature. So, but anyway, the Home Depot experience was weird at best. It was just a weird experience. We were trying to figure out, like, you're in Atlanta. My office was in Vinings. I would fly in every week. If not there, I'd be out on the West Coast in Irvine. And we were trying to figure out if this old division they used to have called Expo Design Center would ever make money. And when we determined that it never would make money, and my friend Cullen Barbado and I had to sit down with some executives and say, this is a bad business model. You need to shut it down, and shut it down as fast as you can. Their response was, well, Wall Street would kill us if we did that. And I was like, well, the business doesn't work, and it's never going to work. And for a lot of reasons I won't bore you with right now. But eventually I left, and 6 months later, Expo Design Center started to unwind. Not on my advice, I'm sure, but nevertheless, that's what I was there for, is to try to figure out whether that division would make money or not.
So do you think in that role you were somewhat, I mean, I think I sort of heard a couple of things there, that you were a bit of a duck out of water, or a square peg in a round hole that wasn't quite a fit. But on the other side, in having to step into stores,
Hmm.
you have to win over the leadership team inside the store to get them to take action.
Absolutely.
So in that part, your likability factor would be a strength. But I suppose you could easily get frustrated with whether it's corporate red tape, other types of decision making, or when your likability factor is not able to influence decisions, then that shows up in emotions and influencing the room temperature the wrong way.
Perfect example of that, Hugh, was I was trying to get a meeting with one of the division CFOs who I liked a lot. Great guy. We had a great friendship. And we kept going back and forth. I kept going back and forth with his secretary. Now, this is a guy I was on a first name basis with, loved the guy. And finally, when the next time I was in Atlanta, I went to his office. I said, "This is dumb. This is stupid. This is what's wrong with corporate America." And he's like, "Don't ever say that to anybody outside of this room," And that's the thing that really annoyed me. You're exactly right. Just the inertia and just the self-protection and the corporate politics and all of it. I could play that game. And I look back, there were times that I looked back, Hugh, and I would have skyrocketed if I just put my head down and played the game. I was made to perform in corporate America. I just couldn't stand it. And here's a great example. It's exactly the way I was with playing football. I was an all-state football player in the state of Texas, Texas football is everything. The problem was I hated football, couldn't stand it. I have this problem with being really good at things I just can't stand doing. And corporate America was one of them. Playing football was one of them. And so that's been kind of the story of my life. Real estate. I bought a real estate business. I love being an entrepreneur. I love being in business for myself. Can't stand running a real estate brokerage.
Yeah, so it's interesting, and I think your journey is the same as similar to mine. I was great at being a tax specialist in Arthur Andersen. You mentioned their name before, and I left some years before the Enron problem, but there were other problems in Australia. But it just wasn't a fit, and I think it was dealing with the corporate life, but also when you got the entrepreneurial streak inside you, you're creative like you are as well, a risk taker. There's more that you can go out and do, and you don't have to deal with that. And I think there's just it's hard to explain in some ways, and the best thing is not to be in those environments. Mm-hmm. But if you take something that you said is, I think we know that you're very capable and love to influence people, to be likable. You can positively change the room temperature. You can persuade somebody to do something. But what is it? Add to that? What do you love to do? What situations really turn you on and get you excited? I mean, you're looking in the healthcare industry now, and to potentially change a paradigm there, which I think is very exciting.
I love to sit in a room with a bunch, another gift I have is you can take 20 abstract ideas and bring them to a table, and I'm going to find every single connecting factor that we can leverage for things that seem completely disassociated with it. James Altucher calls it idea sex. I'm really good at idea sex. I can take things that I can
love that.
I get so excited to do that. I just bringing ideas to get, and looking at something like taking somebody else's business problem that they're so stuck in the weeds, understandably running the day-to-day business, and me having that zoom out approach and go, have you ever thought about doing this? You are so perfectly situated. That really excites me. Making people laugh. I love entertaining and making people laugh. I have no inhibitions. I'm a complete goofball. My wife, who doesn't laugh at anything, she laughs at me, which that makes our relationship amazing. I've always been the class clown, and I love to make people laugh. That excites me. Starting new ventures, coming up with the ideas and seeing the potential, and then describing. And that's the thing, Hugh, that's a gift of mine. I can get people to rally around an idea that involves watching cats eat all day. If I think it's a good idea and I think we can monetize it, I guarantee you I can convince everyone in the room, we should go tackle this stupid cat project. I get that's the gift. What I hate, though, if we can shift to that real quick, is I usually end up, after rallying the troops, getting everybody around it, then I'm the guy that is left to do the operation stuff.
Yes.
Where I have to sit at this desk or sit in my office and start to really think my way through the things. And that's just like throwing cold water on it, because that is not my gift. I am not that guy. I can do it. Again, I can play football really well. Didn't like doing it. Same thing. I can run the day-to-day of a business and I can manage the P&L. It's just, I don't get it. It does not excite me in the least.
So if I take that, and we'll come back to a couple of things you said, that and this is for our listeners, Jason, you're an engager style person, which very outgoing, like to connect with lots of people, fairly results driven. I think maybe more than you've even said yourself, but it's quite strong.
Sure.
Creative, like to take risks. So being able to connect the dots with innovation, whether it's your own innovations or somebody else's, and rationalize it, that would be a real strength of yours. Handling details is not.
No.
I think being more intuitive about what needs to be done and where things need to go, absolutely. And but the people that find it easier to be intuitive about things tend to be less structured. You're more of an instinctive player.
Sure.
And so I would say to anybody out there that wants you to start to operationalize the plan, they shouldn't be getting you to do that, and you shouldn't be left with that. But yes, helping facilitate the conversation to bring the complex ideas together and to sort out what should be prioritized or where the winner is, connect the dots into a product vision or a company vision. Absolutely. That I think that is what an engager person like you can do. But even more than that, I think it's influencing people to come on the journey. And how do you see that then potentially happening with the Vitruvian business?
Well, so that's a great point.
And I know it's early stage yet, and it's just coming together, but it might be worth thinking about that now.
Yeah, so that's kind of the interesting thing, because in that, as a co-founder of our health and wellness business, I have been tagged as the guy I'm going to be the CEO of the company. And until the revenues make sense to support an operational team, then that's going to be me building all the putting the nuts and bolts together to actually build a company that we can then go out and start to generate revenue with. So that makes it very tough. And that's what I'm trying to figure out right now. Right now, it's just grinding it out and gutting it out. And I will say this: if I'm excited enough about the business, I can do that for a time. And I want to. I have a real hard time, not with delegation, but with delegating before I know all the actions that need to take place. And so, not so worried about that. I tell you where I mean, you and our now friendship, I would like to say, is a result of it's a great example of my being able to leverage my gifts, but not wanting to do the other parts of it. And I kind of mentioned it whenever you were on my show, is my podcast is, you've seen firsthand. You and I did not know each other. You came on, and now I consider you a friend, and I'm getting to be a part of this. And I love this part about it. I don't make a lot of money off my podcast, because the thought of having to then take what I love to do, which is meet people like you, and then form a friendship, have the great conversations that we've now had. That's so exciting for me, that the thought of going out and now trying to monetize it, which some people, that's where their gift is. They're like, holy crap, I've got this thing. If I can go make a lot of money at it, then I'm going to go chase the money. For me, it just throws cold water on the whole thing. I would rather just keep having cool conversations and then find somebody else to say, hey, here I am. If you want to try to figure out helping me how to monetize this part of Texas Titan Media, we can do it, but it's not going to be me.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, the conversation and the conversations we've started to have been fun, and you make it very engaging and very easy for me to, being more the introverted person, to come out of my shell
Cool.
and reveal more. And just the fact that we started talking last time and you had on your desk a book, Boys in Crisis.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Lovely accident.
Yep.
And, you know, that we're readers, you know, we're entrepreneurs, pushing our way out there. But I think that even if you bring it back to the Vitruvian business, there's nothing wrong with you being the CEO, putting the pieces together. And as you say, that's for a time to get it right. And then you have a team. But also the podcast can be used to get people excited about Vitruvian.
Sure.
And you know, there's lots of ways to make these things work. But I think that what I'm hearing is, you know, your real strength gift is getting people excited
Mm-hmm.
about an innovative idea and the right innovative idea.
For sure. For sure. That's and it's and again, I think it's my strength because I love to do it. I love, you know, I think this came out in the assessment that I did for you. I love seeing I love being way in the background, helping people achieve whatever it is they want to achieve. To me, that's a blast. And I don't need any credit for it. I don't want them to stand up one day whenever they're receiving their humanitarian award and say, you know what, Jason Wright's here tonight, and thank God I met him. I don't need that. I don't want that. But man, I love to take the individual and see their gifts and their talents. I've got a great example, a former professional baseball player that's a dear friend of mine, been on the podcast a couple times, a guy named Josh Tomlin. Was a World Series champion for the Atlanta Braves. And I want so badly for Josh to be able to exercise his gifts to achieve all he wants to do. And I don't want anything for it. That's not and I think that's one of the reasons why Josh and I have such a good relationship, since he's retired after 14 years in baseball. Everybody wants a piece of Josh because they know he's got a nice bank account. He's a good dude.
Yeah.
They've got all kinds of ways for him to invest his money. And I'm one of his friends that says, dude, no, before you do anything, come talk to me, and I'll never ask you for a thing beyond our friendship. I want to see you achieve. And I think that's something that I love doing more than anything.
And I think that's, you know, that says something about your values, and that you are about the mission. You're about,
Sure.
you know, if you want to call it your calling, or biblically what your work is, and you allow the rest to take care of itself. But it's probably also important that you still have vehicles behind the scenes that, like the Vitruvian business and other interests that you've got, that benefit from you putting yourself out there in the world the way you do, as a servant leader.
For sure. For sure.
But if you said, Jason, how do you want to be remembered, and what's, you know, key for you in making, say, choices between activities you do in the future, you know, other life choices, how do you put that?
You know, that's evolved over the years. I think more than anything, it's become very, very micro versus macro. I only care really what three people in this world think of me, say for my Father in heaven, Jesus Christ. But
Yeah.
that as far as the earthly beings, my two daughters and my wife, anybody else, I'm one of those few people that when I say this, I don't mean like I want you to like me. I hope we have a positive experience. I hope you have a positive opinion of me, but I'm not going to lose any sleep at you not. I don't care if you think I'm rich. I don't care if you think I'm broke. I could care less. But I want Rylan, Abby, and Jimlin to think that their father is loving, is wise, and, you know, get kind of emotional about that, Hugh, because I do take it so seriously. They're all I care about.
Yeah.
And it's really weird because I think that I think my father has this view of me, which is not very favorable. I think he thinks because I've done things in politics and the podcast, I've written books. I think my dad thinks I'm a glory hog, and because I do a lot of things that are outward facing. So I think I've always said, unfortunately, my family has the worst impression of me of anybody. Not meaning my mother, my father, and that's basically it. But it's really the opposite. I do those things because you mentioned it. I am extremely on fire for purpose. And I think it's one of the things why I don't focus on money, probably to the extent that I should. I've just been able to be fortunate and blessed to make enough money. Some would say a lot. Some would say it's all relative, right? So it doesn't matter. I don't consider myself, again, it's relative. I don't think I've just got, excuse the crude term, but I don't have FU money. To some people, they may think that. I don't.
Yeah.
For me, it's all about purpose. And these days, my purpose is just having Rylan and Abby and Jimlin know that I'm a good man and I'm there for them. And I'm going to do my best to exhibit Christ-like behavior to them and show them grace and support, and just let them know that they get to walk through life always having someone that is strong, that is secure in who he is, in their corner and behind them, and believes in them, and will move heaven and earth to make sure that they achieve the things they want to.
Yeah, and I think sort of demonstrating that strong love, that wisdom, having your family's corner, and that of other key people, are foundational values. But I also think I come back to a term you just used a minute ago of being a glory hog. I don't see it as that. I think that you being out there somewhat in the limelight and visible is so that your thinking, your energy, the way that you inspire innovation can be experienced by a lot of people. And that's a gift that you have that you need to go out there and use. If you're out there, a glory hog would be someone who's just going to knock other people off the stage. You're celebrating other people being on the stage and facilitating, inspiring innovations. And I think you need to keep doing all of that.
It's
and
funny.
That doesn't detract from what you do for your wife and kids.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that too, because one of the things that, like, a mutual friend of Tim Ferriss and I have a mutual friend. I've never met Tim Ferriss. I probably never will, but I really look up to him. First podcast I ever subscribed to. I think Tim Ferriss is one of the most amazing human beings to ever live. I mean, he just, wow. Just
there's
incredible.
Definitely some stories there. Yeah.
Exactly. But, our mutual friend said when Tim started out, he was a relentless self-promoter. I mean, relentless to the point of obnoxious. It worked. It paid off. But that's just, I'm not that. That's something I just, and a lot of that comes, again, my father raised me, but my father is someone I think has had self-esteem issues and some confidence issues for a lot of reasons. And he passed it on to me to always play yourself, not just to the point of humility, but to the point of almost self-degradation. And I grew up with that. I thought that's how it was supposed to be. And so, but now I think it's more of a balanced of a humility so I thank him for that. That I'm glad my father raised me the way he did, and that I do have that humility, but I share with him I'm very happy to be very far off the radar, because then you just kind of, I could easily just stay under a rock and be totally content. It's one of the reasons why I don't think I have that FU money, is because I think that the good Lord knows that if I ever had it, I'd probably disappear to my farm with my wife and do nothing but exercise and do cold plunges and infrared therapy and raise an organic garden. You'd never see me. And I know that would not be what's best for me.
I don't think you'd be fulfilling your potential. And I think it's all a matter of how do you stand on the stage and take the stage at the right times to influence people's thinking. And that's what you're good at. The success of the businesses that you've got now and are going to have in the future are going to ride on that.
Yeah.
And the world doesn't need Jason Wright under a rock.
Yeah.
I think getting you out there, facilitating and promoting innovation is what you can really do and do it well.
Yeah. I think that's one of the reasons why I've become so excited about with the Authentic Health Project that I'm doing with these partners is that um, it's health, it's wellness, and I truly, because I have experienced good health in my life and seen what deciding to abrogate alcohol from my diet. I haven't had a drop of alcohol in over 5 years, and
Yeah.
right, and I mean, I'll still like right now. There's some amazing strawberry cookies from Sister to Sister Cookies in Tyler that I absolutely love. It's not like I don't eat some pretty good stuff like that, but just I understand the value of health and how that truly is one's wealth in the long run. You know, the old saying, Warren Buffett, if he could trade places with a 22-year-old who is broke, he would do it any day, but healthy, he would do it any day of the week and twice on Sunday, because the one thing you can never get back is your health. And so I'm so excited to share that with people and help them experience, hopefully, health and well-being. And now I get to match that with vocation. I didn't think I would ever have that. And so it's still a bit of a mirage at this time because we're still in the early stages, but if that business comes to fruition, I think that's where I'll finally get to really hit on all cylinders, Hugh. And I'm really excited about that.
So you've just, in a way, Jason, wrapped it up really nicely for me and made my life easier, because you used a key word that I think you were coming to, but you pinned it, and that's authentic, right? So I think that or what you getting up on stage and being authentic is the key, and that's what. And if you're always that, and you're up on stage for the right reasons, then you'll never be a glory hog, and you don't need to be scared of being that. And I think that it being positioned around health and wellness, because that is such a part of your journey. You know, if you really look at it in terms of your sporting life, your physical life, just the way you've lived, and if you're going to promote a health and wellness business, being focused on your own diet, removing alcohol consumption is important. I'm seeing others out there promoting such businesses, but they're not authentic in terms of how they're living with it and what
Right.
they're doing behind the scenes. And that weakens it.
Right.
You actually being able to get up and say, this is the steps that I've taken to change my habits is really key. And that's what you're going to influence a lot of people with.
Well, I certainly hope so. I think that it's weird, Hugh. So one of my really good friends, I got frustrated a number of years ago because I felt like I had a lot of gifts and talents and that weren't being used. I felt like I was just kind of on a shelf. That's what I told myself. I felt like I'm just on a shelf. And he said, David spent a lot of years out with the sheep all by himself, as a shepherd away from everything until God was ready to pull him in. And so I I do see that. I think a lot of the pieces are coming together. I think that, it's no accident that you came into my life when you did to have this conversation. This is a conversation I probably should have had years ago, but either my ego wouldn't allow me. I've always been really bad about, like, wouldn't hire a coach, wouldn't do these things. The things that I tell everybody else to do is like, no, that's an admission of failure if you have to have a personal coach or somebody to help steer you with understanding who you are. I think a lot of the pieces are coming together. And I think now that I'm older, I'm 49 years old, that I'm able to just be much more patient and not try to force the issue. And I do things now. The authentic part is really big for me because I think because of that fixed mindset, I spent so much of my life wanting to look successful, wanting to look smart, wanting to look.
Yeah.
The guy that has the coolest ski clothes on the mountain but couldn't go down a bunny slope if his life depended on him. That was me to a T. Now I'm able to wholeheartedly admit my weaknesses, and not in some stupid self-effacing, false humility, BS way, but to be say, now this is what I'm not good at. You should do that. I'm able to look at my wife and go, sweetheart, you're good at that. I'm not. I want you to do that. I am okay saying that.
And I think that's why, I love doing these identity conversations, because if I can get people to be in their place of being, which you are now, then that's really authenticity, and what is your authentic identity? And I think, for you being, around health and wellness innovation, authentically promoting it, that's where your authentic identity rests today. And you don't have to worry about image. And I think it's easy to get stuck in that. And this is all part of the growth process. But now you can be in this place of being, and you're going to grow and excel. And you've got all the tools at your disposal and experiences.
Certainly hope so. Certainly hope
So
so.
as we wrap up, have you got a final word of wisdom, Jason, for our listeners?
I think I just touched on one of them. Is one, be true, understand who you are. What Hugh is
Yeah.
talking about, it is so important. It started to click with me really when I was 40. That's when I finally started just being comfortable with who I am. Secondly, be patient. I used to set a bunch of false and arbitrary timelines for myself. If you're younger and you're listening to this, be patient. It will come wherever you are. Do like Hugh's talking about. Exercise that point of being. And while you're there, learn, and be patient. And then third is never for 1 minute believe the lie that wherever you want to go, that it's too late. You're too old. You're in the wrong geographic setting, that there's everything. If you want it bad enough, the only reason why you can't is because you decide not to. One of my favorite things that Zig Ziglar ever said, Hugh, was to the 50-year-old that decided to go back to law school, but said that that they couldn't do it. They were too old. He said, well, the only thing that's going to be different when you're 54 is you're 4 years older and you still want to be a lawyer, or you're 54 years old and you are a lawyer. And so, those are some things that I have really started trying to exercise in my life, and I've seen the fruits of it.
Yeah, and I thank you for saying that. I don't think anyone could express it better. And for everybody out there, particularly those who are entrepreneurs, be patient. There is a season for you, but you can make happen whatever you want to happen.
Absolutely.
So thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Hugh.